Dear Dharma brothers and sisters, we will now start the next session of teachings. Dorzin Rinpoche, we are ready.
Page number 9, I think. Page number 9. Koi chan cho sen ba pa de me be korwa ngu se yo ba jo.
In the space in front appears the Guru in the form of Amitabha, surrounded by an inconceivable retinue of bodhisattvas.
Namo Konjo Sam Dan Tsawa Sam Jane Nam La Jiao Sun Che Roko San Je Lang Gui Che Chan Chon Cho De Sim Je Do Namo Konjo Sam Dan Tsawa Sam Jane Nam La Jiao Sun Che Roko San Je Lang Gui Che Chan Chon Cho De Sim Je Do.
Namo. To the three jewels and the three roots, the places of protection, I go for refuge. In order to establish all beings in Buddhahood, I give rise to the mind set on supreme awakening.
Cho Je De San Yo Ba Ye Jarwa Se Je Tan Je La Kone Tang We Chan Ca Lo Me Do Do Be Man Me Che Sha Ze Ro Mo La So Ba Ngum Je Yi Je Zhen Nem Be Pai Be Co Ji Yi Se So To Ma Mi Ne Ta Den Ba Me Ge Je Dan Can Mi Ha Sem Ne Nyo Mo Wan Je Be De Ba Tan Je Chang Ba Je Nian De Ran Jia Chan Cho Sen So Su Je Wo La So Ba De San Ge Wa Je Za Ba So Na La Ne Da Ye Ran Sem Je Nam Je San Ba Da Lo Ye Je Ra Je Da Wa Che Chang Tu Man Te Ba Ye Che Jang Ko Lo Ko De So Korwa Che Si Ma Tong Pa Nyang Me Men Da Tu Je Yen Dong Ar Jam So Chen Wa Ye Sem Je Na La Se Se So Da Ke Su Nan Che Sa Ba Tan Je Jan Cho Je Je Ne Ren Bor Ma Ton Ro Wa Ye Ren Be Bar De Da Je Je.
With sincere faith, I pay homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas abiding in the 10 directions and 3 times. I offer flowers, incense, lamps, fragrances, food, music, and the like, actually arranged and mentally created. Supreme Gathering, please accept them. I confess all evil deeds, the 10 non-virtues, the 5 acts without interval that I have committed, overpowered by mental afflictions since beginningless time until now. I rejoice in all the merit, all the virtue accumulated in the 3 times by the Shravakas, Priteka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, ordinary beings, and the like. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both, according to the aspirations and diverse mental capacities entities or sentient beings. Until samsara is emptied, do not pass into nirvana, but compassionately look upon sentient beings drowning in the ocean of suffering. May all the merits I have accumulated become the cause of awakening, and may I soon become a glorious guide of beings. The field of accumulation dissolves into me. Thus, the mind of the four immeasurables has arisen within the mind streams of myself and all sentient beings.
Semjen de dan den je dong ar kon dan tra sho de dan da de man ra shen dan yon chen bo ne je.
May all sentient beings have happiness. May they be free from all suffering. May they never be separated from happiness. May they abide in great equanimity.
Nan sen kon de chu kon ran yin dong ma tong ko wan chen nan yun re mo tong sar nyen je song jo zar dan ne ran re re ye kar bo yon je le pe de den de ran yin jin re se xia je cha je ta je ben zhen zen xie xian jiang ben niang jian long ke qie ge me be me nan ne jie zhong you den jia nam kar be de den den de re ye mar bo we ze ran ba le cho je san je chang sen nie bar je qian zhen nen de de ne re lan tang la yang wu ze re zhou ne sen zhe sim jian le nan dan zhen ba jia jiang wu ze cun de re ye ne jie wa zhou wei jian jiu san jie wu ban mi ma sa be ma ra ge lang bo da xia jie chan ni nyang ya long zhen zhen que ge su xian jie zhong you Toi jie jin yuan po la ba de se san ji guan jie de ni jin bo sa te ye ye su guan yu jin re se xia jie san ye yong be be gan zhe gar bo ren jin 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 yin da yu so we yong de jia zhen de jin lo xia jie chan ye yong be dor jian zi mong bo ren jian 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 yin da yu kor de chang sen gen dong co ji go zo wen ne san zhe san qian ba le we zi gan man ten sen qiu jie dang jie bar de wa jin jie yin yuan zhi nan dan ko jie to dan ju ge de ge jin ye ban de jin zhan
Ah, appearance and existence. All phenomenal of samsara and nirvana are empty by nature. Not realizing this, how afflicted are deluded beings in samsara. My own awareness appears as a white tree, the manifestation of unified emptiness, clarity, and compassion. The tree transforms into myself, appearing as Chenrinzik, seated upon a cushion of lotus and moon. I have one face and 4 arms. 2 are joined at the heart, and the other 2 hold the lotus and garland. Peaceful and with loving countenance, I am dressed in the garments of a Sambhogakaya Buddha. Sitting in a cross-legged posture, my lower body is enfolded in a lotus. In the space in front, upon a seat of lotus and moon, appears a red tree gleaming with light. The light radiates, pleasing the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and gathering their knowledge, love, and power. The light then dissolves back into the tree. Again, light rays radiate to the 6 realms, purifying the karmic visions, self-grasping, and habitual imprints of sentient beings. The light gathers back and the Sri transforms into the supreme protector of being, Buddha Amitabha. He is bright red like a mountain of rubies, with one face and 2 arms in equipoise mudra, holding a begging bowl. He is garbed in the 3 Dharma robes and sits in a cross-legged posture, ceaselessly looking upon beings with eyes of compassion. He appears as the great embodiment of all Buddhas. On his right is the noble supreme Chenrinzik, with one face and 2 arms, holding a white lotus with the left hand. White and adorned with jewels, he stands upright. To the left of the Lord is the Bodhisattva Vajrapani, with one face and 2 arms, holding a Vajra in the left hand. Blue and adorned with jewels, he stands upright. They are surrounded by an assembly of Bodhisattvas. The 3 places of the principal Lord are marked with the 3 syllables. From the syllable, white, red, and blue light radiates to the 10 directions, and in particular to the pure land of Sukhavati, invoking the heart pledge of Amitabha and his retinue, who then instantly appear at this place.
Randang lundra nandan kordan je dune tanze ye she ye ne chan ze chen to je lon ne zo je ka me pa lo dan cham ba nam ro de to dan wan ge ne de she ne chan na zo be ma da we den den de tan ze jung gon de dan ye me yo.
From the beginning, home, in the great bliss sphere of my own primordially pure awareness, abides Amitabha and the retinue as naturally present innate radiance. From the beginning, the Samaya being is one with the wisdom being, yet your form manifests from the expanse of great love and compassion, in accordance with the mental inclinations of beings. Following your heart pledge, come here to this place and be seated, indivisibly from the mandala of the Samaya being, upon a cushion of multicolored lotus and moon.
Om Dewa Sabara Varam Beza Samaya Za Om Bang Ho Samaya Ditra Len. Ram Yang Kang Om Ahong Om Ahong Om Ahong Sava Bira Bura Bura Sura Sura Avar Debe Soha Om Sava Bira Bura Bura Sura Sura Avar Debe Soha Om Savabe Avar Debe Soha Om Beza Sabarana Kan Reyin La Je Dan Den Wen Chen Yue Jian Pe Ran Yin Jia Lue Ya Lam Pe Zhuo Guan Zhuo Wan Pu Song Cuo Jie Jie Tan Si Niu Mi Yi Wan Xia San De Ce Chen Ran Yin Jia Lue Lam Zhuo Guan Si Pe Tong Hua Jiu Jie Jie La Zi Me Do Na Cong Zi Ban Zhe Bai Rang Yin Xia Lue Jin Lam Zhou Rong Du Li Yong Din Dong Dian Xiao Lian Jie Jia Zhong Chen De Gong Pe Pe Zhang Zhe Ran Yin Jia Lue Xiang Lam Be Zhou Gong Si Bin Qian Lei Ro Bai Xiao Sa Xian Nang Ge Ren Qian Zhong Men De Sam Dian Ran Yin Jia Lue Lam Be 若光赤裸蒙蒙是我的手，可刚拉索没点名技巧，血肉让心叫月可兰不。若爱困觉全业都把了手，若家觉当天被下人的，他觉让心叫月叫兰不。若光天见谁将错把了手，不懂这所念着若没错。多觉然人家人变蓝白，若观将就生当天把了手，万不曾见的不用电啊，莫拉让人家万难蓝白，若光三昧的人把了手，这些在大业当家是中。也些让心家万难难不，若光三界用的多把里修。
3. I offer this water endowed with 8 attributes, with the nature of generosity to the mouths of the victorious ones. May there be perfect fortune for all beings. I offer this foot cleansing water, clear, cool, pristine, and exquisite, and with the nature of morality, to the feet of the victorious ones. May all beings be relieved from the misery of existence. I offer various beautiful celestial flowers that have the nature of patience to the eyes of the victorious ones. May all beings be endowed with the 7 attributes of the higher realms. I offer naturally sweet-smelling scents and blended incense that have the nature of diligence to the noses of the victorious ones. May all beings become free from the bonds of existence. I offer this precious, radiant, and lustrous lamp that has the nature of meditation to the hearts of the victorious ones. May all beings clear away the dense darkness of their deluded minds. I offer fragrant medicinal elixir, saffron, and the like, which have the nature of transcendent knowledge, to the bodies of the victorious ones. May all beings realize the inner nature of phenomenal. I offer food endowed with the essence of 100 tastes, with the nature of method, to the tongues of the victorious ones. May all beings be sustained by the food of samadhi. I offer harmonious musical sounds, such as those of conch shell, drum, and bell, which have the nature of power to the ears of the victorious ones. May all beings be endowed with the awakening mind. I offer the 5 desirables that appease the senses and have the nature of prayer to the victorious ones. May all beings be satisfied by untainted bliss. I offer the 8 auspicious substances, the 8 auspicious symbols, and the 7 royal attributes, which have the nature of wisdom to the victorious ones. May all beings attain the attributes of Buddhahood.
Sawa Panza Manga Samandra Sabaran Samaye Ahom. Sunje Den Ranjan Tanje Je Dada Sondan Ma Song Bodan Dale Lon Jun Do Bai Jen Che Ba Dime De Chen Chen De Murwa Ye Ro Gong Dan Zin Ra Yue Cham Sen De Nam Da Shen De To Mi Je Wa Ri Yu.
All owned and unowned things of the entire infinite billionfold universe, my own body, enjoyments, and all possessions, I offer without holding anything back to the pure land of Sukhavati. May the self-grasping of beings be thereby fully pacified. May they be endowed with the awakening mind, and may their birth in the pure land be unobstructed.
Rana Mendra La Bunza Munga Ah. Ran Sin San Je Do Be Don Chan Ca Re Don Zin Me Nan Sin Ju Ban Be Nian Zin Che Nan Qun Ye Long Be Sha Ge San Lun Je Zo La Ji Ye Ran To Je Jun Che Me Be Jun Ko Ko Gong De Gong Jia Ran Xin Ju Ge Xiao Ko San Me Me Jia Da Jian Bo Ngo.
Realizing that my own mind is the Buddha, I pay homage on the ultimate level. Abiding within ungraspable empty awareness, everything comprised within appearance and existence is offered. Deluded perceptions of dualistic graspings are confessed within the expanse of Dharmata. I rejoice within the state of the spontaneous completion of the three kayas. The Dharma wheel of unceasing compassion will always turn. Abide within the natural Dhammakaya that pervades all samsara and nirvana. In infinite pervasiveness, where there is no reference point of the three spheres, dedication will always take place.
Ren De Chen Shen De Che Jiang Ko Lo Go Sem Jian Na La Da De Du Jie Ze Dan Jia Jia Yen Ru Dong Zhen Ba Nong Ta Nyam Yang Ze La Zhe nan te jian to la so jar ze jiang zhen zha jiong pa ge zuo de jian xian de you be la zuo la le nga ye san yu be zhang za.
Shri, ever turning the wheel of Dharma in the pure land of Sukhavati, you unceasingly look upon sentient beings with compassion. Homage and praise to Amitabha, who abiding in equipoise follows his pledge to act for the purpose of beings. To Chandranzik, Vajrapani, the other bodhisattvas, the noble assembly of our hearts, and the gathering of deities abiding in Sukhavati, I humbly pay homage and offer praise with body, speech, and mind.
Ranyen jede wan so tokare da den shen da ye zhe ye se ko de ye wo len han chen kar bo zhe to kan ne tong dun jie to kan te ge zong to jie to dan ke nan de to ga shan tang han chen le zer mar bo han chen shan ne to rang ge char yo jian lang ge to te dar ju men che den go wa ye ma le zi ka do na zong zhi chou zhe san ye jiang sin ye ba se kam san sen jian gong ye zhe san jiang ne jie nan da de jin yen de jie.
The hearts of myself, appearing as Chandinzig, on the moon disk is a Sri surrounded by the 6-syllable mantra circling clockwise. From it, light radiates as a white mantra garland issues forth, emerges from my heart, and dissolves into the heart of the deity visualized in front. Thus, Amitabha's compassionate heart pledge of body, speech, and mind is invoked. From the mantra garland around the Sri at the heart of Amitabha, a red mantra garland of light emerges from his mouth, enters my mouth, and I obtain blessings and attainments. In this way, the mantra circles continuously between myself and Amitabha. The multicolored light issuing from the circling mantra garland pleases the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, purifies the 3 types of obscurations of all sentient beings in the 3 realms and the universe, and beings transformed into the pure land of Sukhavati.
Om Dewa Shi, 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 Om Dewa Shi. Ishibzan Kongla Jira Jankur Jira, Zibu Nanda Zilan Nambo, Jara Timba Kongla Sanzip, Kaju Rinpoche La Kubzan Za, Rami Chiji Inja Parana, Tuzo Sanje Kunjung Onye, Ranzi Jukung Ozon Tonzi, Zawa Lame Jabla Kubzan Za. Kibje Yue. Oh yeah. Tene ma yang Rinpoche ni xiu yong ge tene Quran zo ge tene amde dewa nimpa de sa den de ge nga ge ya bo sa tene amcho ge nyu tene ka ge nimpa sa na de ge dos.
So while I'm giving instructions, all of you can continue to recite the Amideva mantra. So you listen to the teachings with your ears, and then with your mouth you continue to recite the mantra.
Tene yang xia de nga so ta je gampo penze pe tene chu ye ta bu chu ye yin ta bu chu ye de la tene chu so ro wa chu lam den ro wa lan chu pa se ban chu ba yi sin cha wa se ta chi ye yo wa chi ye ge na ne tene chu so ro wa shi ba de ka san shu ba re chu so ro wa ki ta dong da duk dong ro ka re ha ko go yo re sin na ta nga na tam ju mi li top ne tene legend la yichi yo ne tene nga ge tambe chu drum de tene chu druyan de yang tene jikni chu je wang de ma sa ne tene chen de yang ma ta ba yin ba ha ko ma ta ba yin ba de tene chen de le xin ba don ne tene tambe chu de ba yin na tene chu lam de so re de ma yin ba tene chu je wang ro so yin na tene chu so ma so re stand tene chu lam de ro a se de tene mataba ju le je ta zo te ri dos tene teren she ya de tene chu lam den ro as ta chu su song ne nga gi ju la mataba ji ne tene ge wa de pa pang den de ji yong ka la tene ya chu lam den ro a se te ne ga chim bo re chu lam den ro ya se te tene nga ra chen de la xin ba do jang Tene tampe chu drum de o jia sama as jiwa sama tene ngaranche la tang tene ma tang ta lutin zambo tendre tobya chi de tene dond nyer songwa yina tene ngarang chu de ba yina yang tene chu de yang chu lamda mando wa chaga yore ten de tene chu lamda ro wa sen de tene jiwan de tang jiwa sama nya la tene ninjong 제거래서 코알은 ninjong 다랑 안서 Dewa tara mundo ma xie de mundo na ne lodo namba xie ma xie de lodo namba xie xie de zo de ne ngara zo kowa la ninjong je go tambo mata ba ju le je de ne ko dongar shi ba de ne kowa de le de ne ningbo me ba ha ko ne de ne ti de ne nga ninjong je ne de ne de chi go as de dos.
So continue the teachings on the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa. And so they are first for the Dharma, one's Dharma to actually become the Dharma. Secondly, for the Dharma to become the path. Third, for that path to be free of confusion. And fourth, for confusion to arise as wisdom. So yesterday we already talked about the first Dharma, how the Dharma actually becomes the Dharma. And just to summarize, the essence that is to be understood here is that now you think I have obtained a precious human body and trust in karma. And so I practice the holy Dharma. And so when you practice the Dharma, it is important that you do not become controlled by the 8 worldly concerns. And so you have recognized that this life is impermanent and therefore have turned away from the attachment to this life. And then if you practice the holy Dharma without then becoming controlled by the 8 worldly concerns, then the Dharma becomes the actual Dharma. So here, first impermanence arises in your mind stream. And so now today we talk about the second Dharma, which is for that Dharma to become the path. And so first, the Dharma has become the actual Dharma. So impermanence has arisen in your mind stream. And you practice virtue and you abandon non-virtue. And so here, for that to become the actual path, that there's a very crucial point here. That's a very crucial point. So you, even though you have turned away from the attachment to this life, and even though you do practice the Dharma, if you practice the Dharma with the motivation of obtaining an excellent body, such as the body of a god or a human in future lives, then although you practice the Dharma does not become the path. In order for the Dharma to become the path, we need to aim for this and future lives, and we need to develop renunciation towards samsara. Within the preliminary practices, we practice the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. And here we first have to cultivate renunciation towards samsara, and impermanence has to arise in our mind. We have to understand the suffering nature of samsara, that samsara has no essence. And so when you understand that, then renunciation arises in your mind.
Tene pachu lamd masangwa yina tene rangi tamjo chu mili top tambo chu drop tambo chu nyamne se jang tene chu lamd masang chapte tene rewa chung chung mo chi top go yo mare pe na ngarang gewa che chung kang de ba yina ya tene che yang na chen de ta yang na je wa sma che la tang me yang na che long chu nga tang chen do o yang na che zong zi bo o yang na pen ke pa chen bo 다 나라서 남주 이모 쓰기도 이모 오 콩케 받침 버리 있어야 소소 그 부글 치랑야 데이터 법정식을 양 같이 오 코페 쥐침볼 다 총래가 yap으지 말아서 데이터 지고 사는 양 같이지 오지 달락 라 창바데 자진 라소바 데이터 탐게된 라그 놈주 라그 대진 퍼슨 소바도 소신 라이엘 지야노 다 드제 삼로 망보 땅고 여러 와시 다 드제 삼로 땅송와이나 되네 논르고 요레스 텔랑아 노와임 바하고는 텔 로도스 포와라 로도스 가르스나 대 지난 지원드던 지와 스만 코와트니 마타바이나 베나 라창바 저진라소 망마탕롬 주 침보인자 남지 코란소 소남세네 마 똥베레스 뭐뽕보 침보 저너 침보 대다 탐지 않고 내급 잠리마도 대다 탐지 마똥 니마치 존르여레스 마도 딱바레 닌지데 내대요 말레스 그래서 마타파탕 tene ko dongajiran yin ba chabde tene ko korana no le tene timpotan dewa ji yo mare tendu nam chi le tong yo gore tendu tene ko ne targo samya ta te ta be tene samno tango te madana tene tais chi non ru yo res ko la ko sabji gandichi samno gandichi tamayina ya ko korana dewa yo mare pe는 아주 대완도 삼산지 머저널 침보 나탄 침보지 대완도 삼산 양 소소페지 지보 요데바카블 대완도 삼산지 도아스 대여레 드리지 삼단 나피 지보인 삼산로지 나탄 리뷰 야보 요 삼산 레 치란 지보 요바 야보 요데바데 네갑장리스 네갑장 드레힌 치란 지보 요나 산행때 미파차시기레스 드랭치랑 기보 가르도 야 양나치랑 zubo dewo도에 양나 총사와 람을 야보 도도에 짐치 찍을 때는 치랑 기보 차대요레스 뒤 짐치 때 조와지 태병와이나 치랑 마치 베차노 그래 pen zubo dewo노 지요나 로버트 나산도 지레병와이나 마치 베차요도와 저놈 같은 침보리 요나 야한테 총래가 노와이나 양 미파차는데 거 마치 베차요도와스 간다르고 코완데 동하지나 이마도 요 말해서 코완데 동하슴 신시기도 하면서 차반 드지 동하센데 고 로아르도 신기 탐jel에 찹데 동하거라 이 동하는 데리요레스 차반 드지 동하 드는 저로 동하 시바데 따라 공도 시바나 이리 따라 기보요 되나 베나 지난 총사와야 보진론도 요나 로버트 주바지 태병완이나 마데베 차로다 대답드는 저로 동하 상문에 열어서 라파트 말은 주로 동안 쉬위 열어서 나랑 정말 멋지는 주와 마부 태부도 하시 주로 동안 되네 동아지 되네 배는 다도 동아지 시바대 다라 강이지 요는 양조 강이 힘받지 도할래비 맞다 도나더니 곧 동아섬지 찹이 열어서 동아가랑 이 되네 동아들 털고 있어 동아가 맡았나 코안들 대와요 말이서 뭐 보이니 가르쳐 온세는 코와레 대와요 말이죠. 코와나는 대원 도삼되는 대원문에요 말이에요. 매나는 서바 미스 매 바데나 매나노 장화지요 말이죠. 매 코랑 라긴 차와인저 디나나 장화지요 말이죠. 매나는 서바 미. 되네 마짱와는 정말 미스 마짱 그 잡동 되나나 정말 힘보지 고삼나요 말이죠. 정말 마짱 정말 힘보요 말이죠. 정말 임바마도 정말 힘보여 말이스. 답비리 베 매난 차와 매난 장화문도 왔어. 마장원나노라 되니 정말 힘보문도 왔어. 베디나이 코안디난 대와요 말이스.
And if the Dharma does not become the path, so then you have found the precious human body and you do practice the Dharma, but if that Dharma does not become the actual path, then there will only be a small result from that Dharma practice. And because then no matter what kind of virtue you practice, it is just done for this life or future lives in order to obtain a body of a god or a human, or to become rich and wealthy and powerful, or to obtain a beautiful body, or to become a great scholar, and so on. So for example, we admire someone who is a great scholar, and then we think that, oh, my child has to become like that too. We have to be like that too. Or when you see someone who is doing well in their business and is quite wealthy, then you think that we have to do that too. We have to be wealthy too, and do a business and so on. And some admire the pleasures and the wealth of the gods, such as Brahma and Indra and so on, the perfect happiness in the god realm. So we think about all of these things, but if we think in this way, we are mistaken, and we have to recognize this mistake and turn our mind away from samsara. Because if we do not find liberation from samsara in this or future lives, even if you find the enjoyments and the power of the gods of Brahma and Indra, one day eventually that will all become empty, will all disappear. All of their power and wealth is only temporary. Eventually it will come to an end, and nothing will ever stay, because everything is impermanent. Everything is naturally pervaded by suffering. There is nothing that is lasting in samsara, and there is no happiness in samsara. And even if we perceive some happiness, eventually it will become empty. So we have to think, I need to become liberated from samsara. If we don't think this way, then the Dharma we practice will become mistaken. And so no matter how we think about samsara, no matter how much we analyze the nature of samsara, we will not find any happiness in samsara. So even though there seems to be some happiness, you think that I am happy, for example, when you're wealthy or very powerful, you think I'm happy, I'm fine, everything is good. So yes, you're feeling good and happy now, but that is only a temporary state. Today you're feeling happy, tomorrow it might completely disappear, because there is a reason for your happiness. Why are you happy? You might be happy because you are healthy, or because your business is going well. There's a reason, and that makes you happy. And because there is a reason, that reason can change. And when that changes, you are unhappy again. Or for example, now when you experience physical health, so you're happy. If you suddenly fall sick, then you become unhappy. Or if you're rich and successful in your activities, and then eventually all of that may disappear, and then you're unhappy again. So wherever you look in samsara, it all has the nature of suffering. And we normally speak about three kinds of suffering. There is the all-pervasive suffering. That is the suffering that naturally pervades all the 6 realms of samsara. There is suffering everywhere in samsara. And then there is the suffering of change. As you mentioned before, one moment you're happy, and then it changes. For example, your business goes well, and then that changes, and then you're unhappy. And especially as human beings, that's the suffering that we experience a lot, the suffering of change. So we can really relate to that, how things constantly change in our lives, right? Then third is the suffering of suffering, or suffering upon suffering. So you have one problem, and then on top of that, something else comes along, and then there's more problems. So basically, we are pervaded by these 3 kinds of suffering, and we need to become liberated from suffering. We need to become liberated from samsara. Master Vasubandhu had said, there is no real happiness to be found in samsara. Samsara is like being in a pit of fire, wishing, so trying to find happiness in samsara is like trying to find cool an experience of cold, coolness in the midst of fire. This will not happen because fire is naturally hot. It will never be cold. Or it is like trying to find a pleasant smell in the midst of dirty filth. Even if you think I really want it to smell good, it's not going to smell good. It's going to smell bad because it's like a pit of filth. So fire will not be cold, and a filthy pit will not smell good. And likewise, there will be no happiness in samsara.
다 추 람던 로고나 되네 코아도 되네 동하저랑 yin 바도 되네 시고요레스 코아도 동하 yin 바 시나 되네 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 코아라 쪼와지네 되네 코아가 탑 배영을 와스 되네 되네 코아도 동하저랑 yin 바시 베나다랑 아주 코아 동하 간대진 동하 yin 바 시고스나 베나가 저 되네 삼당 로아로 시기도 단냐와라 냐르 동하 예다라 예다가 동하 든돌라 든도 동하 만다와 요르스모도 와스 당아서 때 답보 타진도 좀 말로는 네트는 쉽차선 거였다. 되네 플라트 뭐도 테스트 저기 얘나야 그 동하라 이리스 라파드 먹 동하 좀 하고 그러서 뭐도 들어고 동하가 테스트 하고 그래. 든돌 동하 같이 동하도 다 같이 테스트 하고 그래서 말 동하다 가래 유수소 시여러 와서 말랑아 빼야나 되네 소소 동하 가려도 가르쳐서 찍어나 지금 동안도 와서 대다 붙이 사와 레가 주보 대다 남주 동하기 고라지리도 너는 셈나나 마데와 마치바 뭐보도 동하리스 베나다라 다른 직딩 칸도 다르디 또여 그냥 베테티고로 차이야 봐야나야 다 나랑 정말 동하 같이도 nga nam meyongwe shum meyongwe sa te dongan dos nago yoro sta tre sanjön ne che nyomba yena paje da khashi naloni nepa khachi do nepa halam saya nyeshi mazen sentende yinsare mo kachi chosu da khashi te na nasa chirang mom bom mo shosons o teni sosolo te tabteni na meyongwe chum meyongwa sa sosolo nganja do yore donga yore te tab 다 뭐 정순지 인대인 내바 탐지 인대인 대단 제와 남 탐지 다 내바게 남을 동화 같이 요리 정도니도 솔 동화 같이 또 동화 좀 띵거였다 동화 된저 요르스 남종아 좀 하마오 마온다 하마오는 파파 지삼로 마땅에 된지는 로도 요르스 삼로 땅와 있나 대답을 딱 버려 요르스 얘는 다른 같은다 때 나사한테 로어드 중앙인데 되게 참마게 도난지 여러와스 산줄로 다뉴고 여러와스 어때데 되게 동화 같이도 되게 삼로 타와에는 그 동화지랑 일이도 와스 동화 랑기리스는 맞고 있지 야바지고 말이 근데 산지에게 담보네 따힌지네 는 코아도 동화지랑 일이 산지에게 담보 주소온데 님바게 토마스온데 동화지 님바세 담보 소온을 와스
So in order for the Dharma to become the path, we have to understand that the nature of samsara is suffering. And when you understand that, then a sadness with samsara will arise and you will make an effort to become liberated from samsara. So we need to understand suffering. And how can we understand suffering? So we learn, for example, about the suffering of the hell realms, suffering of the hungry spirits, the suffering of the animals, and so on. For example, the jewel ornament of liberation explains each of those sufferings in great detail. And then the gods and the humans have it a little bit better, but also their existence is the nature of suffering, really. And especially we have an understanding of human suffering. We also have some understanding of the suffering of animals, but especially we all clearly know the human suffering because I suffer, right? We suffer. We know that And we know the suffering of birth, old age, sickness and death. And we know the suffering of when our activities are not successful, don't go well, or when the body is not feeling well, and when the mind is feeling unhappy and uncomfortable and depressed. So we are familiar with a lot of human suffering. And nowadays, especially if we just think about this pandemic that is spreading around the world, if we just think about that, we can see how many people suffer from that. And then people are afraid, and you think, what if I get sick, or what if I die? So we suffer from this. And if you just look at the news from a few months back until now, how many people have contracted this disease, and how many people have died from it. For example, maybe around 20 million people or so already had the disease, and hundreds and thousands of people have passed away. And then when we see that, we are afraid. We suffer from our fear, thinking, what if I get sick? What if I die? And so, of course, the people who actually do get sick and who do die, they suffer. But then also their family members and so on, the family members of those who are sick and those who have died, how much do they suffer? So now there is an actual thing happening that we can clearly see. Normally, we don't recognize that so much because we don't think about these things. But if we really think about it, then we can see that suffering is always present all the time. So it is just that nowadays, there is this sudden disease where everyone is paying attention to and listening to the news. But actually, even before, suffering is always present. So suffering is there naturally. And the nature of suffering is not something that we are just experiencing now, or I'm explaining now, but it's in fact the very first thing that the Buddha taught when he taught the Dharma. It is the suffering of samsara. When the Buddha first taught the Four Noble Truths, he first taught that one must recognize suffering.
산지에 했더니 토말 주소한데더니 동아리 시발사스 단 코와 때문에 동아인바 대하고 대응성 거래스 대응 맞잖아 추파야고 차예요 말이 대응 담보 응어서 오늘 코와 동아리도에 답지시 배낭아란서 난추 롭병스겨라서 가서 난추 롭병스인더니 to some goms and shit to us to some goms or to the correct 다만 저 담조진이 발가와 마타바 되는 코로 동할 레줌데 그래서 담보 시요 말았을 때 근데 기베히니가 마팅인데 되니 다 담조진 mel인데 니 까와 인사를 와서 얘나야 마타바리도 와서 tenin koba donga to hin on ko and ne donga jira yin ri do asa tenin tendre je samno tang de dambo tu do dambo chur tu ha ma ole ma hi batan so hi basi tenin tel samno tang ro samno tang ngune ri mendo e so so samno tang ngune donga ri sungu do sanje donga ri sungu do yena mina something marang la chwa tapje si tapje si indu tene titeni une redo samna donga redo sam tene donga in bahako sam tene ta sanje ki garsong resena donga hipasa ta ngi donga in bahako songs yone donga redo ko donga redo 도와로 가와지야 동아지랑 이리도 스탱에 하고 타큐스지 키스 다 디교던 산지 가서 공정 방화사 송도 산지 탑랑띠 탑랑 탑랑 가리띠세나 다 동아데 지미 저던 지미 바게더니 동아 좋아 말이스 저찌다 찐찌를 때네 Julatin, Donga, Dwar, Chuaris. Penanero Donga, Yadag Donga. Te tongue, Julatin, Chongers. That Julit Kare. Oh, Joshibat Kare, Yarba Jokare. Yadalachi with Jokare, Tundrolochi with Jokare. That is also some Pangurista. Or that it in this Mobions in actually that to some gom singer. That's some down. Oh, Tanya could Pena, Maranso. Shinkaji the Soundji Tana, Pena, Shinkala Netan and Retan and Re, Method and Method, Shintan, Shin, Sound Caretan and Devate mean to us. Or Petina. Oh, Narang Julie, you debitini. Julie debita, Nyom Basic, Nyom, Delatine, Nyom, Digitini, Tini Le Manda was saying with us. Sometimes she down one less out to us. Oh, sometimes Chado one less out to us. On sometimes Senag one less out to us. On sometimes Ducha one less out to us. On sometimes Tomo one less out to us. Narang similar you debit Nyomba. Take it in a lamb and our Sapalatine. Tini Dreva Telatini, Nison Sunda. Tani Flatam Murtan, Dodin and Dwardo say at it. Narang in your Mombatini, Panatundo was. That your Mombalatini. Magiwa, your Momba Magiwa Latina, Nison General, Tinity Hako. Oh, yeah, Tati Hakon, oh, ta, Mune, Nyom Bashibata. Magiwa Shiban, the so Yaporim those and the so Panzari those. Ta to some consumption, the so reg and Hako ring the thing I can't to the Papang to ya. Didn't be so chigores. Tate Pang, Mapan said that Dambo Dungating or Shigo, Dungating or Shisonina, Dungain by Shisona, Tintin, Dunga Gaoma, must sit it Dunga Gaoma. Magas didn't me bella, didn't be so cheer. Pena, Narang Jim Mageva drips and tan driver don't have no one and don't have go me. Don't have go me, then I am calling ink. Pen and Yeval and Dogime, Nay Yudal Lingman. Oh, so pen that I not a trouble in 9 wine. Oh, I know me. Suji Yevan don't do your marvas. Suji Yudak Yeval do your marvas. Suji Pena Soso Matin de la Kang, don't have my Yando your marvas. Yen I am me, Janko. Jole, who songs are do. Never caught at a younger was. Tataran revenue Kablanga, Mogo, Chigimelana called Tapshi, Penanganzo. Jacob Lomba Yimba Jendruana, or Nalomba Yimba than Ruins, China, passport, Triati, with a chapsanki, China, Namdana de Namdana Kali opposite, or Nalomba than Rogmanga, Mam Bawinsina, he and some those number Kundu, China, Duna Panalem, Manduna China, Lomba the Lebrover was. Oh, Petina here. Chirang Lem gave a sabi, Tachirang Adunha go me Zenaya. Did it Dunha go me Zenaya? Go Dunha taught them Babi less. Did you that's the same? Stand it. Tamboni. Dunha go mina, that Japan. Tanga Tower the tower is. Maon Balata, Mayoma, Mayoma cheated in Betos in it. Tini Panga, Sanjay Tabantin, yes.
So when the Buddha first taught the Dharma, he said, recognize suffering. First, you have to recognize that samsara is suffering. Because if you do not recognize that, you will not become a good Dharma practitioner. So first you have to investigate that. Is samsara really suffering or not? And this is what we do when we study Buddhism. When we study Buddhism, and we go through those steps of listening, reflecting, and meditating. So what are we listening to? So we listen to the instructions of the teacher who tells us that it is difficult to find a precious human body, and this life is impermanent. Samsara has the nature of suffering, and there's karma, cause and effect. So first, you don't know that. Then the teacher explains that to you. And then you understand, oh, it seems to be very difficult to find a precious human body, and it is impermanent, and there's suffering everywhere. now I understand that. So first you hear that, you through hearing, through listening, you understand. And then once you have understood that, once you have recognized that there is really suffering, and then is the reflection, then you really analyze that deeper. Is there really suffering or is it not? And so the Buddha insisted that there is only suffering in samsara. So then you apply that to yourself and you ask yourself and you analyze that by looking at yourself until you find there really is only suffering. So you really recognize suffering on this level by reflecting upon it. So the Buddha said, recognize suffering. So now you feel, I have understood that. I have understood that there is suffering. And I have understood that samsara has the nature of suffering. No matter where you are born in the 6 realms of samsara, I am clear. I have decided that I know that there is only suffering wherever you go. So then next, the Buddha said, so then you must abandon the origin of suffering. And in order to do that, the Buddha taught a path of many skillful means. So once suffering ripens, when suffering arises, it does not arise for no reason at all. Suffering arises from causes and conditions. And without causes and conditions, it cannot arise. So the cause of suffering is the afflictive emotions in the mind. So there is a cause for the hell realm, for the hungry spirit realm, for all of that suffering. So what are all these causes? What is the cause of the hell realm? What is the cause of the hungry spirit realm? What is the cause of the animal realm? So again, we have to reflect, we have to think about it. So when we study Buddhism, again, we go through listening, reflecting, and meditating. So for example, it is like planting a seed into a field. If you're planting barley, then you will have barley. If you're planting rice, you will have rice. If you plant a flower, you will have a flower. If you plant a tree, you have a tree. Whatever seed you're planting, there will be a corresponding result ripening. So if in my mind stream, afflictive emotions are present, then based on these afflictions, I accumulate all sorts of different karmas. Sometimes we create karma with anger, sometimes with jealousy, sometimes with stinginess, sometimes with attachment, sometimes with ignorance. So it is due to the afflictive emotions present in my mind that I accumulate all sorts of different karmas. And these then ripen into the result of the 3 lower realms, the gods and the humans, basically the 6 realms of samsara. So it is created by my own afflictive emotions. The afflictive emotions, non-virtue, are the causes of the suffering in the 3 lower realms. So that needs to be understood. When you understand that, then you see, so my afflictive emotions, all this negativity is not good. I have to abandon it. I have to give it up. And so in this way, you reflect upon each of those points. And once you have understood that clearly, you will make an effort in abandoning the afflictive emotions. And so to do that, again, you first have to recognize that there is suffering. And once you recognize that, nobody wants to suffer. So everybody tries to not suffer. Nobody wants to suffer. But even though we don't want to suffer, just by saying, I don't want to suffer, doesn't mean that there won't be suffering. You will still encounter suffering, even if you don't want to. Even if you say, I'm not going to hell, I'm not going to the hungry spirit realm, I don't want to be sick. It is like a sick person saying, I'm not sick. So whether or not you want to go to the hell realm or want to go to the hungry spirit realm, nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to experience so much suffering and misery. However, if we have created the cause for that in the past, then the result will ripen precisely. And even if you say, I don't want to, and I'm not going to, you have no choice. It is still going to happen. For example, if all the preparations are made for you to travel to a different country, so you have your passport, you have your ticket, you have your visa, you're on the airplane takes off, and then you say, I'm not going. You can't tell the captain, hey, I'm not going. The airplane has taken off. So whether you want to go or not, you're going to arrive in that country. And so likewise, once negative karma has been created, suffering will be experienced as a result, even if we don't want to. It will naturally fall upon us. And there is, at that point then, there is no way to escape, no way out. So therefore, if you do not wish to suffer, you have to abandon the causes of suffering. You have to make an effort for suffering not to ripen in the future. And so for that sake, the Buddha taught a path of skillful means to show us how we can abandon suffering.
Donga la donga yin pa shi to song yin jong je yang yin na te pe drupa nyong go yo res ju le nyom mong pa te drupa nyong nyong yin na te ni ko wa le xin cha chung te ni rang yin ge sam che che wa so yong go yo res ngo dos pe na lama ji chin ko ma tham ji ko na ba chu nyam ni se ne kan je ne Chopo kompang topo jingdo yore se na, o tu tsuku ju la matapa jingdo yore. Ju matapa yinpa, ngane hako de nyamne si. Kowa to dunga jirangi yinpa shi. Dunga la dunga ngonsum de tongne. Tene, kowa la taru mendo yore si. Pena jetsu mala reba ke song yore basi. Kowa dunga la samna tangwa yina, nying long champo langa dosi. Nying namte zu maraba chua yinpa dosi. 어때? 답더니 동화도 시네. 드니 빵거 여러 봐서 나라서는 이나 드니 녀모 뭐 드바 침보인데 드니 베 코알라 신차 침보. 마통 코안드니 탈고도 코아도 동화리도 삼벌로도 뉴뇽스 용고만도 왔어. 대 가려지는 맞을 드바 침보 이거 따리스 녀모 뭐 침보 이거 따 이거 여러스 되는데 또 동화인 바시 삼모양 땅드니 또 탈버 탑을 베고레스 다 탈버 탑이 여러스 다 마타파랑이린도 동하지랑이린도 다 가르치고래 탑랑 힘바 가유사를 했더니 근데 30발 왔어 30발에서 탑랑 미여레스 탑랑 산지게 띵지여레스 기와줍 딕파빵나 탄도거래 대 탑랑레스 배낭하나 따라 밤에 냠네시야 너 탑랑 초도 주바레스 산지에 밤에 진kam는 로고나 당코 동안에 탈고나 산지에 밤이신 로고도 왔어 산지에 밤이신은 로디 가래고도 만아서 대화지는 제 저신데 되니 띵 초긴 산데서 대화지 신kam이 일을 진거도 왔어 대사도 말한테 되니 저 초사 두잔시기도 왔어 오다저 초사 두잔시 코안드니 탈고산 나 대화지는 신은 로고산 로와 코안드다 냐발치나 동아리도 로와 말치나야 동아리도 hla르치나야 동아리도 왔어 동아미사 뭐도 왔어 다 동아미사 진로고도 가와도 대화지 신로고도 대화지 신세지 열세 대화지 신 산지에 밤이게 되니 신감 조도 열세 만수 용사 조도 고도 열세 단 로담으로 소소라왕리다 너도 요난 로사 열세 근데 단 론도 용야라 로 동아인 바하고 거 동아인 바하고나 티니 틴틴 로그래 대바지 신문 로그로 왔어 대답더니 대바지 신문 로고산 tena loyal tini ngana ge ja tara posa du ja se go was
So we understand the suffering nature of samsara, and impermanence, and renunciation arises in the mind. So we have to recognize first that what suffering actually is. And then renunciation will arise when you recognize that. And when that arises, it is actually a sign that one's obscurations, one's afflictive emotions are not so thick. And when they are not so strong, then one's attachment to samsara will also not be so strong. And naturally, one will have greater love for others. So, for example, the past gurus, the great masters, how have they attained highest accomplishment through Dharma practice? Really, it is because first they have truly understood impermanence, and they have truly understood the suffering nature of samsara. They have seen suffering directly, and then they made an effort to free themselves from samsara. Milarepa, for example, had said, when I think about the suffering of samsara, the winds in my heart begin to stir. So an unbearable feeling arises in one's heart when one really thinks about the suffering of samsara. And when one sees that, one will want to abandon suffering. So it is just that normally it is because our obscurations and our afflictive emotions are very thick, very strong, that we have a very strong attachment to samsara. And therefore, there are only really very few who truly want to be liberated from samsara, who truly are able to see the suffering of samsara. And if one does, that is a sign that one's afflictive emotions and obscurations have been somewhat purified or are not as thick. So we have to recognize suffering and then make an effort to become liberated from suffering. And so then one may wonder, but is there really liberation? Is there really a way out of samsara? So now we know everything is impermanent and there is so much suffering, but what can we really do about it? Is there really a method? And the answer is there is a method, and the Buddha showed that method of abandoning non-virtue and practicing virtue. For example, the practice of the Buddha Amitabha is actually a supreme method to become liberated. Even if you want to become liberated from the suffering of samsara, you have to go to the Pure Land of the Buddha Amitabha. So how do we go there? There are 4 causes of taking birth in Dewa Chen, and one of them, for example, is to visualize the field of accumulation, which means to bring to mind the Pure Land of Dewa Chen. Another cause is to accumulate merit and purify obscurations. So you've made up your mind, I want to be liberated from samsara. I want to go to the Pure Land of Dewa Chen, because there's only suffering in samsara. There's suffering in hell, there's the suffering of the humans, suffering of the gods. There's only suffering. There is no place where there is no suffering. I want to go to a place where there is no suffering. And where is that place? That place is Dewa Chen. And does it really exist? It does really exist. The Buddha Amitabha has created it for our sake, and he's there waiting for us. But whether or not we actually go there is our own choice. It's up to us. But if one wants to go there, then there is a place to go. Recognizing samsara, it is all suffering by nature. I am determined to go to the Pure Land of Dewa Chen. I will go there. I will create the causes. I will accumulate merit and purify obscurations.
다 코와 동아지랑 이 바시네. 다 코와를 탈고도 다 대화지네. 말하면서 다 대화지는 대화지나 로야 됐더니 레슬라슈 탑란 야슈 차데요레스 참만도 투비야 참만도 투비야 되네 인디테 레라오레스 되네 되네 telling 베서시 담마기 자침부 추냠네 곰드 자침부 신의 빼야 보래 그러봐 대 마시장 되네 산지에 빠밀레 대바 찌직 고네 되네 가 대와지는 로고 삼 되네 다 산지에 빠민 칭하 온 아메데와서 사데나 대와지 신감 제 특별해서 telama koma tsama ke sungwe res pena ngarang raw ji nyamnyong de ten shuba yina gubju khoni lo re gubju khoni la da ngar go na tarang ga chien bo che tang lama menje tang tarang kimpo tinjeng zambo se tara et khong le ta ti tem na la yo re pa me ka thi tem na tara khong shin la zik sari ta pe lama nyamnin thombo re chu nyamnin tombo 콩 갈고는 팸네 네 뭔가 치는 뭐지 콩나 봤더니 아마데와 대치 힘좀 치고 대치 힘좀 치고 총인데 되네 코너게 우스송송 되네 나랑 밤이 라 대파 째지도 세네 되네 아마데와 싸네 된지 냠네 제나 띵디 대화지시는 째기리 송타라 밤이 동접하는 송대 대 우스 투바인시 콩 기비신 제대 라마냠네 침보리 데이터다 라마 고마 만보고 송요래 되네 다른 거저 김본 주민 부서가 근데 만보 송도스 되네 따라 세타 추가라인데 로타차 되네 아메데바 동접 치면 대치 힘좀 치면서 두고도스 데이터부터니 맞을지 공파 보기 공파로서 듣지나는데 아메데바 동접도 추구요래 참 추구요래 따라 디나는 라파데 되니 맞아 포녀 망보시고요. 그래서 맞아 포녀를 남주 추 롭존스야. 추냠네 세건 튠진다 투죽인 당고요 말바스. 되니 갑토면서 투메데 되니 갑토라. 되니 저 동접세 차라 렌지는 좀네. 되니 동지사네 되니 저 모람지. 되니 저 동접나는 효투스나 되니 창마치. 제와 아빠면은 제와차. 텔레tin 소소가 랭이 딥접 탐제 다. 되니 대화진이 제와 되니 된저 야 되나는 레지세나 되네 아빠면에 대바 찌지유바 되네 텔레드네 아빠면 냠네세네 되네 아메데바 사데나 텔 레진이 레다바 레다바다 레게 되네 아빠면 텐체네 되네 디드니 나게 아빠면 대바 찌네 되네 냠네 제성와이나 되네 대바진이 징도 찐저요 와스 데이터 되네 삼지 마차버드니 핀토 침보요래 되네 코브 동아 네 탈고나 되네 아빠면 냠네세나 되니 대화지신데 찐로요레스 되는 말한도 따라 로만 보지기 싫어 봐서 좋아하는 보지기 되니 것은 그 님바세 따라 산지어 밤이 님바다 되니 찐레즈기 님발라서 바꾼 거 꼴마시 동접 싸고야 빼마시 꼴마시기 그래 저서 코네게 송을 코브 심진 남지 되니 추자침보 마시장 되니 산지어 밤이 칭하 찐레즈 칭하 라서부터 다 탐지 다 대바이나 되니 송은 내내 타네 그래서 대화진의 시행을 지어하겠더니 찐 되는다 저 되는다 고깝지 차용을 그랬더니 대답더니 냠네 제나 되니 대화지 시행을 제 투고요 그래서 되니 저 제다 매제대 담보 소속은 코와게 동하인 바시 동하들 단독으로 도에 다 단독으로 요나 다 동하래 미사 대화지 레보로스 대화 커도 다 대화지 신카리 도스 대화지 신카트는 로사도스 드는 로고도 삼블로도 고요 드는 로도 요나 드는 가게 대파세 드는 아빠면 칭하세 냠네세나 드는 로트고요레스 근데 셈 좋아 대파 슉 침보고 코와를 드는 신차 돈에 드는 코완도 동아지랑 yin 바신 때는 님정글로 침보고요레스 대화진의 시험으로 누구 대파다나 침보고요레스 대답 대파다나는 째요레스 따라 참이라가 대본은 송이 왔음 탈민 콜을 잠sol에 니친통에 타와이 늪지 소지나 대화지신 가서 세대미 받지발 효송을 탈민 콜을 잠sol은 코한테나 탈래 나오요 말이지 동한테 잠sol은 잘라지 사선들이 야 링건 레라고 리듬도 왔어 배 디나요 코한테 잠소나이 디나는 게 되게 심지 탐지 탈값을 커 보여 가르치네 신차 친구 Nyomoba Nimari, Nyomoba Mambo Sakir. Then it dinner young son corn, then tell couple of caboyures. Or then the thing covered the hand ya taps in it. Then Niching only Tawana is Nipachimbo, Tams Zongkang, then the Goja Chia last of us in Tenico. Nipachibo Sadin, then Zonghana tad the Rutu was here, Rutuanizing. Then Dodina, Rutuanized in it, Zong Zongo Topayor was, then a Rutu was, or Petina is in it. Naran covered Donga jumps on the Teni, Donga Din and Targodos. That they Tabu apartment they pass in the Targodos and the Teni Nipachimbo Jima Zonghana and Tubana is in it. Devajin Hamilton, State I am in a thing, I intimate Devajin Rogo, some below the Goyores, Devajin and Rogins.
So you understand the suffering nature of samsara, and then you think, I must become liberated from samsara by all means. And actually, the practice of going to the Pure Land of Dewa, it is actually the easiest way to go to the Pure Lands, the best method of skillful means. Everyone can go to the Pure Land of Dewa. Therefore, it is said that it's easy to be born there. And therefore, one really must make an effort. So, of course, if one is able to practice the Dharma and meditation extensively in a grand way, that is excellent, of course. But even if you do not know various things, many dharmas, it is sufficient if you cultivate a single-pointed faith in the Buddha Amitabha, and that you make up your mind, I am going to the Pure Land of Dewa. And then with that determination, if you then recite the Om Mani Dewa Shri mantra, you can be born in the Pure Land of Dewa. Many of the past masters have said that. Just to share one personal experience of mine, in 1992 at Gar Monastery, there was Dorzin Rinpoche, there was Mingyu Rinpoche, there was Khenpo Tenzin Sangpo, who is depicted here in this booklet and in this image here that Rinpoche is holding up. And he also gave instructions on this practice of the Amitabha, and he actually had already passed into the Pure Land. He was an exceptional Lama of highest practice and realization. And so at that time he came to Gar Monastery, and together with Dorzin Rinpoche and the other Lamas, we held Amitabha 100 million mantra recitation retreat, Pure Land, Dewa Pure Land practice. And on that occasion, he said that if I direct my mind with single-pointed faith to the Buddha Amitabha and recite the Amitabha mantra, the Amitabha mantra, then with certainty, I will be born in Dewa. So this is what he said during the 100 million mantra accumulation. And I heard that him say that directly. And he truly is an authentic, highly realized master. And many other masters, many other lamas have said the same thing. For example, Khenpo Chinme Phuntsok has mentioned it many times. They have also at the Serta Monastery I'm also holding the 100 million Amitabha mantra accumulation annually. And in general, it's a Tibetan tradition in the Tibetan monasteries to hold this 100 million Amitabha mantra recitation retreat. And what is also unique about this practice in Tibet is that for these practices, for these retreats, also the lay people, the male and the female lay people join and participate. And so normally the lay people do not have a lot of time and conducive conditions to practice the Dharma, to study the Dharma. So they don't have time to do that a lot. So the practice of the 100,000 mantra accumulation of Amitabha is one of those occasions where they all come together. Also the lay people come together in that monastery, and then they practice together, they accumulate the Amideva mantra, and they make their dedications. And in this way, they all have created a connection to the Buddha Amitabha. And then once their obscurations become purified, and one takes birth in Dewa Chen. And so such an individual is called someone who possesses karma or pure karma. It is when one cultivates a single-pointed faith in Amitabha, and then with that faith practices Amitabha and recites the mantra, then one is of such pure karma, such a karmically destined one. So if one practices in this way, one will be born in Dewa Chen. So the benefits of this practice are really inconceivable. So do you want to become liberated from samsara? If you want to become liberated from samsara, go to the Pure Land of Dewa Chen through the practice of Amitabha. So we have engaged in this practice, and we've known about this for many years. Also, for example, Dorzin Rinpoche has mentioned the importance of the 3 Kaya mantra, such as Amitabha and Chenrezig and so on, and he always encouraged disciples to engage in the practice of the 100 million mantra recitation. So he said that samsaric sentient beings do not comprehend the Dharma in this vast way. So for them, if they just recite Amitabha and Chenrezig mantra, they will become freed from the 3 lower realms, and they will take birth in the Pure Land of Dewa Chen. This practice is the cause or the condition, it is the opportunity. So if you practice accordingly, you can take birth in Dewa Chen. But mainly, what determines whether or not you take birth in Dewa Chen, it depends, first of all, on your recognition of the suffering of samsara. Do you have a wish to become liberated from this suffering? Have you turned away from that suffering? If you do have that wish, you want to go to a place where there is no suffering. You want to go to a place where there is only happiness. And where is such a place? That place is the Pure Land of Dewa Chen. So there is such a place. So you just need to go there. You need to have the wish to go there. So if you have that wish, and if you have a single-pointed faith in Amitabha and you practice, then you can go there. But what's really necessary is to have a strong feeling of faith, and also to turn away from the attachment to samsara, to recognize the nature of suffering of samsara, cultivate great renunciation, and then to practice with faith and a pure perception. So these need to be present. Also, Jagme Raka Asya said in the aspiration prayer of Dewa Chen that the ocean of samsara is an endless ocean, and we need to free ourselves like a prisoner trying to escape a prison. So the ocean of samsara is vast. It is not easy to become liberated. Just like when an object falls into the ocean, it's not so easy to get it back out. So it's very difficult for sentient beings to become liberated from the ocean of samsara. And why? It is because of their attachment to samsara. And also, if we think about how many afflictive emotions do we cultivate each and every day, over and over again. So therefore, it is very difficult to become liberated. And yet there is a method to become liberated. And if one, then this verse continues, if one applies this method with great determination, one can become freed and take birth in Dewa Chen. So it is like a prisoner running away from prison. So if somebody's locked up in a prison and the prisoner tries to secretly escape, he will be afraid that the prison guards will catch him. So just like that, he will try to run away. And so in a similar way, we need to feel about becoming liberated from the ocean of samsara, the ocean of suffering. And once we have resolved that, then we apply the method to practice the Buddha Amitabha. Then, like a prisoner running away from prison, we become liberated from samsara. So you definitely need to have this wish, this mind of determination. By all means, I want to become liberated from samsara. By all means, I have to go to the Pure Land of Dewa.
다 코去了 되는 인종 단 코와 능한 바신에 되는 인종제네 되네 나나 대화 신카는 로고 삼부터니 삼노요나 다 추람도 로아레스.
So when you understand the suffering nature of samsara and you cultivate renunciation towards samsara, and then you think that I must go to the Pure Land of Dewachen, if you think in this way, then your Dharma has become the path. But of course, keep in mind, unless you make an effort, you might as well lose the opportunity to go to Dewachen.
Chancho Semjo Rinpoche Maji Pana Chije Je Ba Nyang Ba Me Pa Gone Gondon Pervasive.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for the teachings. Dear Dharma brothers and sisters, we'll now have a dinner break. Please be back here by 6:25. The next session will start at 6:30 sharp. Thank you.